Now, the second biggest myth is that secularism is merely a separation of church and state or a separation of religion from society. And this is a very, let's say, ideological self-understanding that secularism and secularists would like you to believe. That secularism came, imagine there was religion A and religion B fighting over here, secularism came in and separated them and say, no, you guys, you have to get along now. That's not true. Secularism is not a separation of church and state or of religion and society. Secularism is the production of entirely new forms of religiosity. Yes, there's a secular version of Christianity and a secular version of Judaism and a secular version of Islam and a secular version of everything else. Well, why? In short, the difference is that secularism produced forms of religion and religiosity that were easy to manage and govern and dominate by the nation state. The government wants to control. That's what modern governments do. They control, and they try to control as much as possible. And when you have people that their main allegiance is not to a government, but actually to God, not to the nation, your supposed ethno-nation usually, but actually to a community of believers, the government kind of sees this as a threat. And you should be willing to live and die for us, for the nation, for the government. You shouldn't necessarily be so fond of your faith community or so dedicated to your God that that would come in the way of serving, let's say, in a time of war, the army, your nation state, etc. And so this is where secularism comes in. Secularism comes in to produce new forms of religion and religiosity that are much more amenable to the government, that are much more friendly to the government. And so imagine you had a cloth, okay? And your religion originally was this big cloth. What secularism does is secularism basically cuts that cloth down to size. And so it will say, this is what fits in our version or our vision for society. You guys have these elements, we can accept that. You can, your 5 pillars, your prayers and your fasting, your personal status laws, some things that having to do with your marriage and your burial rituals, we'll let you keep that for the most part. But these other things out here, your ideas of how society should be run or how government should be implemented or other things that affect society or public morality, such as prohibition of gambling or the prohibition of alcohol, the prohibition of fornication and of promiscuity, right? These things are not, they're not accepted here, right? These things are not secular concepts. And so we need to now produce a different version of religiosity that is okay with being put into a box. That is what secularism did. So rewind that.